Welcome once again to Jewcast IRL. I am Andrew Meyer, along with Mark Lobliner and Alan Roberts. But most importantly, we're going to get right into it today. We have the esteemed, the legendary Jason Whitlock. Jason, welcome to Jewcast.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
I got so many questions for you. I just want to jump into it. First, you broke the story of Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, backing Stephen A. Smith for president. And I've been saying for a while now, people are underestimating Stephen A. Smith. He's very charismatic, and in a debate, he could really do damage. How did you see it coming that Bob Iger was pushing Stephen A. Smith for president?
Well, I'll start with I don't think he'll be any good in debates. So we disagree there. But 2 years ago, Stephen A. let it slip some sort of out of his mouth attack on me. And I was like, oh, okay. That's interesting. And Stephen A. had this uh, autobiography he had written of himself, a memoir. And it had come out in hardback, let's say 3 years ago. Uh, I read it 2 years ago when it came out in paperback, and I was like, "Holy cow! There's a lie. There's another lie. There's a lie. La 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 la." And then I got done reading, and I was like, "Hold on, this memoir. I think it's called Straight Shooter, a memoir of first takes and second chances." And I go, "He's touching on all the political themes that would make him a perfect candidate to be a Democratic presidential candidate." And so I read the book and I'm like, man, this is like Obama's book. And it's filled with fantasies and narrative lies and all this. And I go, oh, now I understand why he goes on Fox News and pretends that he and Sean Hannity are best friends. Stephen A wants to be president, or someone has told Stephen A, we're going to run you as a presidential candidate. And then, you start thinking, well, what powerful people would perhaps position Stephen A as a presidential candidate? And I don't know if it gets much more powerful than Disney and Bob Iger. And it just all kind of made sense to me. And so 2 years ago, I started saying, hey, this guy's running for president. And no one took me seriously, and people laughed and thought it was stupid. But it was clear as day to me then.
Yeah, I think it's
Wow.
very. I think it's been very obvious for a few months now, maybe 6 months, but that's incredibly early that you saw it 2 years ago. And he's saying things. His script writers are very good. He's saying things that middle of the road people agree with. He was questioning January 6th and the government's involvement. So, you can say he won't be good in debate, but I'll tell you this: the guy gets paid millions of bucks from ESPN not because he's a stiff, but because he's got some energy. And
He,
go ahead.
he he has energy, Andrew, but he has no substance. And I'm not saying politics at this point requires substance. Kamala Harris ran for president, got 70, 75 million people to vote for her. Joe Biden allegedly got 81 million people to vote for you. You don't need substance. But uh, why he sounds good at the moment and why he sounds smart is because he's facing no resistance. I'll give you a sports analogy. Looks like everybody here has played some level of sports. And so he's running the three-man weave. And there's no defense in basketball when you're running the three-man weave in practice. He's playing 7-on-7 football in the summer with no pads on. There's no tackling. And so he gets on interviews and no one questions anything. He'll say the most ridiculous things, and he's been allowed to do this. He's sat in front of other podcasters and told stories. Oh yeah, when I was growing up in Queens, the drug dealers told everybody not to touch Stephen A. Smith, and he's talking about when he's 6, 7 years old, and that the drug dealers are warning everybody that kid's going to be something great. There's a hands-off policy. Don't touch. And I'm like, now I'm not from Queens. I'm not from New York, but I've spent some time in the hood, and I've known people that dealt drugs, and I'm a little bit up to date on it. I got family members that have done time for dealing drugs and all of that, and I'm just like, They don't see some little 6, 7, 8-year-old retarded kid and say, "Hey, don't touch, but he's going to be special one day." That's just not how it happens. And so when I see him on with Sean Hannity, or I see him interviewed with, I think, Megyn Kelly or whatever, it's just softball after softball after softball. He'll say something that someone like me would be like, "Well, hold on, man. You got to explain it." And so we can just dumb it all the way down to, let's remove the politics. The interviews he's been doing for years. I've seen him unpack I got a basketball scholarship because I hit 17 straight 3-pointers in a scrimmage game that I went up there, and Big House Gaines offered me a scholarship on the spot. I played Division I college athletics. I was a scholarship athlete at Ball State University. All of my friends either got football or basketball scholarships. I'm like, hey, that ain't the way it works. And you got to explain that to me, Stephen A. Kevin Durant and LeBron James ain't hitting 17 straight, and you're not getting, at a little poor HBCU, you're not getting a scholarship on the spot. They don't have that kind of money. They can't do that. You can't try out on the team, because he's saying this happened at the end of February in 1988 or 1989. I'm like, they're still in their season. Their season's still going on, and this guy's telling people he's at a scrimmage on a Sunday the day after they played a Saturday game. It just doesn't add up. He's facing no resistance. And so it's like a man going to a whorehouse and coming out and bragging about how many times he got laid. Well,
it still counts. Wait, well, it still counts though, right? It still counts. Though, right?
I guess statistically. So I listen through all this drama. I watch you religiously every day. I remember you doing a piece on his didn't he score like 1.5 points in college basketball or some crazy stat like that?
That's what he had been claiming. Yeah.
Is there a 1.5 pointer? I haven't watched basketball in a while.
Well, let's make sure everybody has the context. They put up stats of people's senior year. He's on a show with Jalen Rose, and there was another athlete, and then himself, and they put up, I think maybe it was JJ Redick, I can't remember, but they put up their senior year stats, and they put up Jalen Rose, and then JJ Redick, I think it was JJ Redick, and then Stephen A 1.5 points. And everybody's laughing, and then Stephen A jumps in and goes, "Well, what they're not telling you is the reason my scoring average was so low is because I only played one game and I hurt my knee and my career was over." And so he hadn't thought it through. You can't average 1.5 points in one game.
There has to be some way, some way they could take away 0.5 point. There's no way.
And so it's just these types of lies he's been getting away with. And so a few months later, he goes on his own podcast. He's off ESPN. Someone perhaps privately had told him, like, "Hey, man, this 1.5 point deal that you're out here defending, Stephen A, we've done the math." And so on his own private podcast, he doesn't really clean up the lie. Well, actually, he does. He goes and launches into this deal. It's all a lie. None of it's true. The 1.5 points not because I didn't play a single game, and so no one then addresses, like, well, why were you sitting on ESPN TV lying? Why have you been lying about this for years? And then when you actually do the research, they've done events at Winston-Salem State, promoting Stephen A as this great former player, or not great player, but just former player, having pictured with former teammates, allegedly. And like, one of these former teammates is a guy called Gary Stevens. Well, when you look him up, and the only reference I could find of this Gary Stevens during that time frame, he was a 6'3" guard. There was a recruit. The guy standing next to Stephen A on the court claiming to be Gary Stevens is a solid 4 to 5 inches shorter than Stephen A, who is 6'1". And so it just doesn't add up. And it's so, but no one's asking these questions. And maybe it's not required. Obama got away with a lot of fictitious stuff in his narrative. Mm-hmm. And so maybe it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's maybe if he lies, he's perfect for politics. Have we ever thought of this? Maybe he's the guy and he gets away with it. But there comes a time when they start vetting you. And the thing is, will the Democrat Party allow him to run the way that thing operates?
Yes, because here's why. Here's the upside for the Democrats. One, either they push Stephen A through and he's the candidate and they have a puppet that they can control. He's a compromised candidate, got there undeservedly. He has to do what they tell him to do. The Democrats know they're bleeding male voters and that they're seen as an emasculated party. And so that's why Stephen A is running around pretending to be this tough guy and all of that. And so they have a masculinity problem, but also let's just say that the end goal with Stephen A isn't to make him president, but is it to draw attention to the Democrat process? If he's in debate, how much do the ratings rise?
Yeah.
And they're hoping that it'll be significant just for people to come see the circus show with Stephen A. Smith. And so the Democrats have a problem. Their lineup is horrendous. It's all been emasculated.
Mhm.
Tim Walz, feminine. Gavin Newsom, to some degree, feminine, has done all this support of the transgender issues and things that make it hard for men to access him. And so that's Stephen A., whether he gets the candidacy or not, he's there to help sell the Democrat Party as a more masculine party. And that's why I think they staged this confrontation between he and LeBron James. Man, they're pulling a lot of puppet strings in a lot of places trying to use Stephen A. Smith to give their party a pair of balls that they have cut off in the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years.
They had Kai
Yeah,
Cenat
yeah.
on network TV with Stephen A., where Kai was saying LeBron's the greatest player ever, and then Stephen A. gets to say, no, Michael Jordan's the greatest player ever. Like, what more popular person in the world could you associate yourself with? I'm the Michael Jordan candidate. You know, I see the same stuff you see, Jason. But moving off Stephen A. for just a minute, Jeremy Boring said, if Ben Shapiro cured cancer, Jason Whitlock would find something in it to bitch about. Now, as far as I know, Ben Shapiro has never cured cancer. In fact, he tried to smear every pro-peace right-winger as a white supremacist in 2016 and told people he wasn't voting for President Trump. Anyway, Jeremy Boring has since been fired as co-CEO of the Daily Wire. And I just wanted to know if you had any parting words for Jeremy Boring, the former CEO of the Daily Wire.
Jeremy's job was to protect Ben Shapiro's brand. And I think Jeremy planted the idea of, hey, the Daily Wire has an America First problem that we're not seen as, we're losing the MAGA crowd and we're losing audience. Candace Owens has left and she's more in alignment with the America First crowd and the MAGA movement. They lose Brett Cooper, another blow to them. Not that Brett Cooper was hyper political, but this is a major blow to them. And so they're losing the MAGA crowd, the America First crowd. They're losing the appearance of some ruggedness, a similar type masculinity problem that the Democrats have. They're seen as establishment. And so Jeremy Boring comes up with the bright idea, we're going to do the most MAGA masculine thing ever. We're going to lead a movement to get Derek Chauvin sprung from prison. And we're going to do it by demanding that President Trump give him a federal pardon. And I was like, whoa, this is really stupid. Trump's got a lot of things he needs to accomplish. And if he, in the first few months of his presidency, said, yeah, I'm going to go in here and offer a pardon to Derek Chauvin on the federal charges. It's like, well, all he's done is stir up a hornet's nest, promoted more racial division, the whole 9 yards, and he's accomplished nothing because those state charges are still going to stand. Derek Chauvin's going to remain in custody in a state prison, which is more violent and dangerous than a federal prison.
Yep.
And this is just a shtick and a ploy. That's what I thought in real time when this beef between me and Jeremy, because I pointed out, like, man, this is a bad idea. Here's why.
Terrible.
Jeremy jumps in and says that, I just hate everything Ben does. And I'm sitting there going, and Mark, you say you watch the show every day.
Yep.
How often do I talk about Ben Shapiro?
I don't think I've heard it ever.
Yeah. Once or twice a year, tops.
Yeah, I mean, it might have been the ones I was traveling, but no, you don't talk about that. I mean, it's such a bad idea for so many reasons. One is it doesn't spring him from prison. And another is it's just gonna Trump is just now starting to make grounds with the black vote. Like, there was a huge increase. If you want to erase all that work that the Republican Party has done to garner the non-white vote, there's an easy way to do it without even trying, for no reason. There's no net benefit at the end because the dude's still in prison. So yeah, it sucks that if you do believe he's innocent, it sucks that he's the scapegoat, but sometimes that's just how life works. It's unfortunate, but
look, if they were raising money for Derek Chauvin to beat these cases, I would give money. And because he does need to be brought out of state prison, federal prison, whatever. I think it's clear as day. George Floyd overdosed, and they used this guy as a scapegoat and strung him up. It's a modern day lynching. But there's a process he's going to have to go through, and we need to do the long process. And so now, as I sit here, what is this, 5-6 weeks later? Yeah, I'm sitting here, and now I connect the Derek Chauvin thing to something I've been complaining about here in the recent weeks. It's just like, hey, man, people, and this is in the last 8-9 days as it relates to Austin Metcalf and Carmelo Anthony. It's like, hey, man, they're trying to use this Austin Metcalf, Carmelo Anthony aftermath, not the actual event, but the aftermath of it, to stir up racial division, to they got the algorithms. They've paid people to go out. Carmelo Anthony was self-defense, and so they're helping push Black people into leaning into their racial idolatry and just blind support of Carmelo Anthony. They've started this Give, Send, Go and GoFundMe, and they've got the money up to a total
tons of money
where it's triggering. And I sit there and say, and I'm just saying this, I hope I can speak this transparently on this show, absolutely, but I'm just going to keep it real. There's a group of people, a demographic of people that all of America believes that's the worst tipping crowd in America. Black people. They'll go to a 4- or 5-star restaurant and leave a 5% tip and peace out and deuces. Everybody knows it.
My daughter's a server, and I'm neither going to confirm nor deny that allegation.
But that group, that demographic, is giving $300,000 to Carmelo Anthony. I ain't buying it. There is some liberal white folks and that are giving Carmelo Anthony money. And it's some sort of 50-50 or probably 70-30. 30% of that money is coming from Black folks, 70% is coming from white liberals. But all the blame is going on Black people because they're loud about it over social media and all of that. And then I've seen even on the conservative side. So I just saw a video today where Tim Pool has come out and tried to make an argument about self-defense. And I'm like, hey, what are we doing here, guys? Everybody just wants to. This is a cut and dry case. A 17-year-old brought a knife to a high school event and stabbed a kid in the heart. I don't care if the kid said, hey, leave. I don't care if the kid touched his backpack. You don't stab. We've all been high school kids and grabbed somebody and without the I'm going to get stabbed in the heart for this. This is insanity. And so I just see a lot going on social media that's all intended to put Black and white at odds. And now when I look back at that Derek Chauvin deal, which I believe is Jeremy Boring's idea that he foisted off on Ben Shapiro, it's like, they're intentionally trying to stir racial division.
Well, it sells. I mean, it's a proven commodity. I mean, the way it was used in 2016, Black Lives Matter inception, and then when they brought it off the shelf in 2020 again, it's the same thing with Stephen A. Smith. I think that they're just addicted to the narrative type of politics. Like, they create a narrative, and they're very used to having control of social media, mainstream media, stuff like that, in order to be able to get it to, be true. Like, there's not a chance in the world that, without mainstream media and social media, they would have been able to pull off half of what they did. Like 2020 COVID, if they didn't have mainstream media blocking everybody, people would have just been outside. Same thing with all the messaging around Black Lives Matter and the burning down of cities in 2021. Like, the Summer of Love was insane. Like, it was such a surreal experience that, people that are on the left were actually openly stating, and I'm a former Democrat. Like, I'm a 90s Democrat. Right? That's how I view myself. I really haven't changed much. I've just been labeled as being on the right because, frankly, the left went out fucking crazy. They're just out of their goddamn minds, right? So do you think that they'll have the same ability to do these things now that their basically narrative machine is fractured? Like, it's not broken because they still have control of Facebook and they still have control of Instagram and TikTok to a certain degree and other messaging things, but nobody's really watching mainstream media as much anymore. Nobody's really watching those sorts of things, and people don't believe what legacy media says as much anymore either. Do you think they'll be able to push somebody like Stephen A. Smith or the racial division as well as they were used to, where, like, they just made it so every headline read, white man kills black person, or, like, I mean, every single headline was that way. Do you think that they'll have the same ability to do so coming up in this next election cycle that they have, or do you think that they'd still try to find another way?
I think they're in the process of figuring it out and trying to, and they're so desperate that, in my opinion, what they're forcing the uniparty and the controlled opposition, they're forcing them out into dangerous territory where they get exposed and called out as, like, oh, you're not really a conservative. You're just a closeted feminist, a closeted leftist. And I say that because the selling of Stephen A. Smith as some sort of presidential candidate. This isn't being pushed by the left. It's being pushed by the right. It's Megyn Kelly.
You're right.
John Hannity. It's
Patrick Bet-David.
Well, Jason, speaking of closeted operatives on the right, Nick Fuentes recently called you a token, denigrating your unique voice to American society. Nick Fuentes' contributions to society include telling young men that dating women is gay and fantasizing about cat boys. Before Kanye West linked up with Nick Fuentes, he was talking about Jesus is king. Now Kanye, who's linked up again with Nick, is focused on Hitler and pornography. Do you think Nick Fuentes is a good representative for Christians or even a good leader of men?
No. Nick Fuentes is, you remember white Sean King, who claimed to be black?
Yeah.
And do you remember DeRay McKesson?
Talcum X.
Yeah, Talcum X. Yeah. You remember DeRay McKesson? DeRay McKesson, the gay Black Lives Matter leader. These guys just pop up out of nowhere. They develop incredible followings. They're given enough inside information to get their credibility up to a certain level, and then they're set loose to promote chaos. And so that's who Nick Fuentes is, in my view. The Boston Globe is writing stories about Nick Fuentes when he's 18, 19 years old because he wore a Trump hat at some rally. And I'm like, oh, hold on, man. I know how the legacy media operates. I know how newspapers operate. I was, in the newspaper industry and a star in the newspaper at the highest level for years. 18, 19-year-olds that wear Trump MAGA hat to some. They don't get profile stories on the front page of the Boston Globe. They don't get written about at 18, 19 years old unless someone has a plan for them. I'm talking about when they've accomplished nothing. And so when I look at the video of Nick on January 6th pulling a full-blown Ray Epps, and there's no consequences, just like none for Ray Epps, I'm like, you got to be working for somebody. And then when I look at someone claiming a Catholic Christian faith, but all the profanity, all the leading people away from a biblical worldview, and for me, Christianity is the key to Western civilization, the key to our Constitution, the key to supporting the values that have made America great. And when I see someone claiming a Christian faith, but leading people away from it, I'm like, that's intentional. And and then when I see them, it's just Charles Manson. I don't want to go too deep with this, guys, but the book Chaos, if you haven't read it, you should read it. And it's totally blows up the whole helter-skelter narrative that we've known for years, that they made movies about. And you understand how he was part of an MK Ultra deep state plant that was allowed to get away with all kinds of stuff. And big part of Charles Manson's rhetoric was about a black-white racial conflict that he was trying to promote and prepare for. And I look at Nick Fuentes, black-white racial conflict that he's promoting, seems to be getting away with things that others spent 4 years in prison facing real oppression for. He gets away with it. Again, whatever the guy they said was the Proud Boy that wasn't even there. Dario or
Enrique Tarrio.
Yep.
Enrique Tarrio, sits in prison for 4 years, wasn't even there. But a guy on a megaphone telling, hey, this way is the Capitol, jump over the barricade. He does no time. Wow. I don't think he's a force for good. I think he's an operative, and there seems to be an element that's deep within an American culture that wants to promote racial conflict.
When you said closeted operatives, I'm like, oh, I got to ask him about Nick. Both because,
and he's in the closet.
He's an operative, and he's in the closet,
So, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, the thing about Fuentes that's so fascinating is how somebody who's never really done anything, like, what has he done? What is his career before just going up and hassling Ben Shapiro with a baby stroller in his hand? That is his claim to fame. That is his tipping point. But he's never accomplished anything, and it's false idolatry. Basically you have these guys who are propped up, who've never done anything, never created business. They've never done anything special. All he could do is speak. It's kind of, I'd hate to bring up this analogy. It's kind of like Hitler. Really good speaker, really good at engaging people, probably one of the greatest public speakers of all time, by far. If you listen to him speak, man, it's hard. You put that before a football pregame, people going to win that game. You're not losing that game if Hitler's giving your hype. It's not going to do it. So I just look at someone like Nick, and none of it makes sense, because usually you have to have some sort of a resume. Like, you've worked in all these different arenas before what you're doing now. You have a resume. When you go to a job, you apply to be a CEO or a COO or a CMO of a company. You can't go in and become that executive without going through the grind, without actually climbing the ladder. This guy out of nowhere, all of a sudden he's a figurehead for the alt-right. That's just weird. He's done nothing to earn that.
And so now apply that same logic and insight to Stephen A. Smith in the political arena. He can talk great, but there's not an ounce of substance to anything that comes out of his mouth as it relates to politics. And there's less than an ounce of substance that comes out of his mouth when he talks sports. But he's at the top of that profession as well. And it's always the unqualified, unaccomplished that get elevated magically somehow to the most prominent positions.
Remember when Stephen A. did MMA? That was hilarious.
Yeah.
And then his boxing, the boxing video that got out, that was even better. Like, I'm sorry, but like, in my opinion, he set the black race back about 20 years, about 20 centuries, because he showed that black people could be completely unathletic. In that video, I've never seen a more unathletic black man in my life. Like, it's like Bill Cosby trying to dance back in the day. Like, it's like, oh, there are some black people who can't dance. And then you look at him trying to box. You're like, well, that black man does not have one athletic bone in his body. It was bad.
I just couldn't imagine, because Stephen A. and I are the same age, trying to prove your athleticism at age 57, 58. That's comical.
Well, you don't have
18,
to.
19, 20 years old and left it behind.
You don't have to. You played D1 you were a great football player. Like,
no, I was a decent football player, but I hear you.
No, anybody, I'm sorry, anybody, what, 7% of high school athletes go on to play in college? In my opinion, if you even play D3 ball, like, you're better than most. And if you play D1 football, like, you're a dog. Like, let's not discount the fact that in your day you were a dog.
There's some tiny bit of truth to that. I could have been a better dog, is what I'm saying, but I hear you.
So a dog is a dog.
On the Stephen A. Smith subject, have any of you got, like, about to out myself? My wife and I watch General Hospital every day.
Oh my God.
Every day. Like,
we can't be friends
how
anymore.
Long? For how long?
For like 2 years now, 2 or 3 years. Like,
so you don't know anything about old school General Hospital when it was great. That's what I was.
Oh no, I watched it when I was growing up with my mom too. Like, it's amazing. It's like, the show's wild.
You remember Luke and Laura?
But, yeah, Laura's still on there.
Laura is still on General Hospital.
Yeah, they got tons of people that were up there. They all got grandkids and shit like now. But one of the funny things that you guys may not know is, you guys know Stephen A. Smith is a character on there, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I had no idea.
He plays Brick.
I'm proud. I have no idea.
He plays a character called Brick. He's like he's a fixer for the mob boss on the show.
Wow.
He always tries.
Really?
He tries to come across like this really suave, smooth talking guy. Like, and occasionally they'll have him try to act like a tough guy, and it is like funny. It's like comical, right? Like, it's just like, you know, I've been hit in the face a few times. Nothing that dude says ever would possibly, like, it's just, he doesn't seem to get it. Like, you know, like, if you've ever been spoken to by a dude who can kick your ass, you're like, oh shit, I'll shut up now. Like, I mean, I understand this man's about to fucking go to my ass. I'm going to be quiet. It's all good. When he talks, it's just like, it's funny. It's like, it's almost like he's doing a parody of it, but he's super serious because he's trying to be a serious actor. If you guys have never seen it, you should look up some clips. It's fucking hilarious.
Oh my God.
Grooming him as an actor, preparing him for biggest acting job of his life.
Oh, honestly, that it might be like why they have him on the show is like, you know, hey, like, we have you on the show to be able to say these lines in a convincing manner. They should have done more of that with Biden. So, I mean, like, but Biden couldn't talk, so no big deal.
Yeah, you can't get over dementia. You can't teach out of dementia. That's not going to happen.
Practice. You can't practice.
I wanted to ask Jason a sports question since we got him. I am a huge NBA fan. I grew up watching the Miami Heat in the 90s, you know, Pat Riley, tough teams. The scores would be in the 80s. These days, the NBA, it's almost like watching ballet. This Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, if you touch him, it's a foul. Like, the game's gotten very soft. Do you think that capping three-pointers would do anything? Like, if you said, okay, each team, you only get 25 threes per game, and after that, every shot's a two. Like, what can be done to fix the game?
Andrew, I don't want to be dishonest with you, because I always try to speak from a honest place. And so I can't give you my best answer, because I just announced on my show this week that next week I'm going to spend 2 or 3 days unpacking how to fix the NBA.
Wow.
And it's a big, amazing idea that, again, so I could answer, I think capping 3-point, but that's not what I really believe.
Wow.
And I'm going to spend 3 days or how many ever days it takes explaining how to fix the NBA. And it's I can't, if I unpack it here, I've ruined my show.
So we understand.
We'll watch. We'll be watching.
I do have, I believe, the silver bullet for the NBA. It's an idea that then would move over into other sports as well.
Wow.
and it could have an amazing impact on increasing the competition level in all these sports. So
Really?
the guys are really focused on, oh man, we got to win this game or blah blah blah. And for the NBA and whoever, whatever league adopts this deal, it's going to significantly increase the value of the league and the money that they actually generate.
Wow.
Hopefully they listen.
I just wanted to add one thing, by the way. Capping 3-pointers is racist. I'm just letting you know. So,
hold on.
White people?
I think the white guys have to shoot a
Do you not remember
higher
Paxson?
percentage from 3-point range.
Larry Bird?
And so
That's the only shot we have.
It could hurt the white shooter that does, that just drains 3-pointers.
I will take the hit to the white man in the NBA as long as we get better games.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's funny because ESPN, the direction of them with Ryan Clark and this kind of race baiting, and they got, obviously Jamel Hill was back in the day. It's fascinating to see how far ESPN has fallen. Like back in the day, Keith Olbermann was actually fun to watch back in the day. And then he lost his mind. And now you can't even bear to look at the guy without getting some sort of reaction deep down inside. So I actually think it was a political move. I think they saw the country was going more woke. So they went more woke with their direction because it's all about selling ads. I really don't think that even at the top of the top companies that they're trying to alienate viewers. I think they just saw a majority of our people would dig this. And then now do you think they're starting to pull back from that woke kind of perception they have?
No.
No. Okay.
Stephen A is as much a race baiter as anybody on
Yes,
the
he is.
network, and they're running him for president. What you have to understand the importance of sports in terms of moving the culture the direction you want it to go. And so keep in mind, Jackie Robinson integrated Major League Baseball in 1947. He sparked the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s. And so it was the integration in baseball that sparked the end of segregation in America. Sports is how you move the American culture, and the left figured it out. And that's why they've overtaken and moved American values out of sports and turned the sports leagues far more secular. And so what ESPN is doing is intentional, and it's all connected. It's all connected to the theme I've been talking about here in terms of, hey man, they really want racial conflict. They really want to drum up tension between black and white. They're using ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports, that's backed by Disney, one of the worldwide leaders in global culture. And they are set that all sports has to be examined in a black-white. Why do you think every year Jalen Hurts won quarterback the Eagles and won a Super Bowl? And ESPN immediately tweets out, he's the 5th black quarterback to win a Super Bowl, or 4th, or whatever he was. And I was like, what's the number when they stop?
Right.
Is it 10?
Yeah.
Once we get to 10 black quarterbacks, we won't talk about the 11th. And again, they're using ESPN to program everyone's mind that every time a black person does something that a white person has already done 100 times, it's history making. It's significant. And they know that's fingernails on a chalkboard to most sports fans, and particularly to white sports fans, because most of us in our right minds, we go to sports to get away from the racial conflict. That's what sports under Christian values always represented. That just how we're one in Christ. We're one in sports. We all have this goal of success in our team, and it doesn't matter if the guy that I'm playing next to is a white guy from Oklahoma and I'm from New York or Chicago and blah, blah, blah. It's like we have one goal and we put it all aside to achieve greatness. that's the messaging that was consistent with what we were trying to do in America. They've totally changed that and have elevated everyone's expectations that every time something happens, we must evaluate it through the black-white racial conflict. They've done it with sports. They've normalized it, and now you see it everywhere.
Yeah, sports should be the ultimate meritocracy. If you're good enough, you make it. If you're not good enough, you don't. There's no DEI in sports, or there shouldn't be. It should just be, can you ball? Can you help your team win? Can you bring a championship to your city? There's so many things that just, but for me, I remember when they put all the end racism in the end zone, like conservatives were like, boycott sports. My son plays football. I can't boycott football. I want to watch football. So I'm almost forced to watch, to go through the BS just to partake in a pastime that I feel is great for kids to participate in. So it's really a shame how they've kind of ran that down our throat. And did they end racism by putting that in the end zone?
I think I heard that there was an announcement in 23, I believe, in February 7th, 23, I think is when they announced that the NFL had ended racism. God bless them. I'll check. We can run that through Google or Grok, but I think it ended then. So
can you imagine like a racist guy watching? He's like, you know what? I should end racism. I'm sold. I'm sold. I'm ending this right now. I'm not racist. Oh my goodness. End racism. The NFL, man. I mean, that was a Kaepernick kind of steamroll, like spiral. And Kaepernick's a fascinating story because here's a guy who lost his job to Gabbert. I mean, he was phenomenal that year. He took him to the Super Bowl. Like, I mean, I was a fan. I'm like, this guy's amazing. And then he just, defenses catch up. And one thing you'll learn in any sport, the hardest thing is to be great all the time. Like, that's why I give Mahomes credit. Because if you play sports, if you played at your level, my level, and which isn't as good as your level, I'm a Division III guy, right? If you play at that level, you realize that for example, when they first came out with the West Coast offense, the double wing, especially in high school, unstoppable. Unstoppable. You can run the double wing all day long with a subpar offense and score 40 a game. Not anymore, because there's enough film to be able to key the guard, all that good stuff. So it's fascinating to see that he became the guy. Oh, I'm out of the league because of racism, bro. Before this all happened, like Gabbert took your job. It's not like you lost your job to Brady, like Bledsoe did. You lost your job to Gabbert, a career backup. Like, come on. But it's easy to cry racism, and he came from a white family. Like, the whole story is fascinating. Here's a guy who was raised as an upper class white child. And then all of a sudden he grows out an afro and now he's fighting against apartheid. It was so weird to watch that whole thing unravel.
Go check out his girlfriend.
Yeah.
Thick, big booty, Marxist. And men have been so emasculated that we think we should follow women rather than lead women. Yeah. That's what inclusion is. That's what progress is. And so he entered into a relationship with a Egyptian woman, light-skinned, attractive, thick, big booty. And she's led him around by his nose. She's a Marxist and literally took a guy that had one of the greatest blessings that this planet and God can offer you.
Yeah.
Your real parents, the dad you never met, and the mom that chose to give you up. And some family steps up and says, no, we'll take him and we'll love him and we'll treat him as our own. And it's a white family. And they give him a family and they nurture him and blah, blah, blah. And then he takes pot shots at them. Says that they treated him in a racist fashion. And when he wanted to get cornrows and they didn't want him to date a certain girl because she wasn't this or wasn't that. They were parents. That's what parents do. Complain about who you're dating, complain about your hairstyle. But my father hated the way that I dressed and all of that. That's what hated that, just keeping it real. I'm transparent. Hated that I was attracted to white girls and like white, and the white girls would call our house. That's what parents do. And it's not because they hate you. It's not because they want the best for you in their mind. He took a dump on these people that sacrificed and did things for him, and he got caught up in the identity politics and just wanted to have his black moment. And so he, that woman that he's sleeping with and following, when he loses his job as quarterback, she's, that's because they're racist, Colin. And she, again, I can't blame it all on her. He's simple-minded, and he's, obviously he doesn't have a biblical worldview. But he just kind of fell into that trap. And the whole system that they've designed begs and baits black people to play the race card. It makes you look, oh, you're the next Muhammad Ali. And I'm like, Colin Kaepernick, you ain't Muhammad Ali.
No.
You're not. Muhammad Ali didn't want to go to Vietnam and risk his life. And he had a set of religious beliefs and religious leaders that he was following. Colin, you're just following behind. You're p-whipped. This woman's got your nose wide open. You've been emasculated, and you can't take responsibility that you sat around and spent time in a tattoo shop and worrying about your guns and how you look, rather than further developing as a quarterback. And your job got snatched by Blaine Gabbert. And rather than take responsibility, let's blame racism.
Yeah, and then he showed up they actually gave him a special little pro day, and he showed up out of shape. Like, he's like, no, I've been training all the time.
He didn't show up. He didn't show up. He wanted him to go show up where he decided to have the workout at some high school.
And then where he was, dude came in with a pot belly saying he's an elite athlete still. And his movement was terrible. I mean, it was just fascinating to watch that people were like, well, every time a quarterback did bad, everybody be like, oh, Kaepernick could have done that. Dude, I don't think people understand how hard it is in the NFL. Like, look at LaDainian Tomlinson, like unstoppable, gets turf toe, loses like a half a step, and is no longer dominant again. Like, that's how close the great are to the rest. And it was just crazy to watch. I know you as a sports guy and me as a sports guy is watching this like, no, he's not. He's not a good quarterback. He could probably be a third string guy in case two people get injured in one game, God forbid. But it's just crazy watching that whole thing unravel.
Did we freeze up?
Yeah, he froze up.
Yeah, I think he could have been a good backup quarterback, but who wants a guy with a bad attitude in their locker room? Nobody.
Well, that's part of it too. You know what I mean? Like, I think the NFL, I think all of the sports organizations, obviously they all fell along with the legacy media stuff for a long time. But it was strange to watch these folks literally go against their fan base, because very frankly, like, the thought process of losing that kind of money, it was either on purpose, where they just kind of, as an organization, decided we are going to go woke for a while and see how that plays out, or they really are just very fucking dumb. Like, I mean, they really just wanted to lose a lot of money, because I know, I don't watch sports anymore at all. I just it's not something I like.
None.
But I know a lot of people that I really don't watch any sports. I really don't. Like, I mean, I might watch an MMA fight here and there, and if it's late night and ESPN has a judo tournament on, I can't fucking unglue my eyes. But besides that, like, there's not the sports that I like. There's not like organized leagues that are there. They're like, I love judo as a sport. You know what I mean? Like, and there's just not a lot of competitions. Yeah, cornhole.
Caitlin Clark didn't capture your imagination.
Caitlin Clark, man, she's a baller.
I think they did a fabulous job of trying to like revitalize the WNBA, and then watching all those women get in the fucking way of it was wild to me. Like totally crazy. Wild. Like, okay, we're finally have a lot of people watching you now. Now you guys can show yourself to be professionals and try to start earning more money and get more asses in seats, and then they fucking
but
like
Caitlin kind of backed down. She was like, what is it? I was carried on the shoulders of black women.
Yeah.
No, you weren't. You were carried on the shoulders of training your ass off for 5 hours a day and taking 800 jump shots a day, and just being a better player.
Right.
But she's almost forced. Like, imagine if you live in a fraternity house and everybody beats you up every day or makes fun of you. And so if you have a different belief than them, so she's in a weird spot where she has to coexist with these people. And I don't mean these people, like the people she's around. Did want
I
to
do.
clarify. So I understand having conviction, but I think she was, I mean, at the end of it, she has to actually work with these people every single day. And I don't like it, but I can kind of understand why she'd give in, because before she just didn't say anything, but I'm sure they're chirping at her every day in the locker room. You know, I'm sure locker rooms for women are similar to men. She's getting chirped at every day. She hears the media talking. She hears Ryan Clark and Jamil all talking about, oh, she's just famous because she's a white girl. No, I mean, she's a generational player. What do you think, Jason?
Well, she's the most exciting thing to happen to women's basketball and women's sports in my lifetime. I think she's the biggest star in sports right now, period, end of story. Wow. Bigger than LeBron James. Yep. She's right there where Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan was in terms of she actually moves the needle. Wow. The fact that the NBA or the WNBA didn't step in to put a stop to all the trolling from the current and former Black players goes back to my theory that all of these leagues, the whole sports world, is trying to promote racial conflict.
It's crazy.
Jason,
that does work right in there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We were talking about Colin Kaepernick and him claiming to get blackballed because of his faux political stance. But I remember a quarterback that I went to college with, Tim Tebow. He won a playoff game in the NFL against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then just a couple of years later, he couldn't even find himself a third string job. Do you think Tim Tebow was blackballed for being a Christian?
I think that we were so secular at the time that blackball is just like they created a noise around Tim Tebow that made it not worth the hassle. Hey, if Tim Tebow's your backup third string quarterback, but the media is coming in asking about him every day, and we can't really talk about the starter, and we're talking about something that really doesn't affect us day to day, that is people just saying, hey, it ain't worth the hassle. I think it's wild that someone taking a knee and honoring Jesus Christ became that polarizing. It speaks to how sick our culture is, that some guy that isn't getting in other people's face, isn't trolling. It's like we're happier that Angel Reese trolled Caitlin Clark at the end of a basketball game than we are that Tim Tebow would take a knee and have a brief moment to celebrate Jesus Christ. That was really controversial and polarizing. It says something about how sick our culture is.
100%.
You're absolutely correct.
I did some research, a little bit of research before Jason came on the show today. I found that in 1998, you were suspended by the Kansas City Star for heckling fans at a Kansas City Chiefs game. What was that about?
You really don't know?
No. I mean, I've been watching you on TV for a long time, but 98 is a little old even for me.
So the Chiefs are playing the New England Patriots. Drew Bledsoe is the quarterback, and I'm in a press box. It's a cold day, and the New England press box at that time, the fans could stand up and turn around and look into the press box. They were nearly face to face with you, and so they were doing that and going back and forth with me. And so I would write little notes on a slip of paper and put it up against the window or something like, it's warm in here, because they're sitting outside in the cold. Look, I used to be a big dumb jock, think like a big dumb jock, and speak like a big dumb jock. And so we're trolling people back and forth, and I write Drew Bledsoe, gay, ? And I put it against the deal. And the PR guy, or the media relations guy for the Kansas City Chiefs, was a guy named Bob Moore that hated my guts. And he hopped immediately into action. God, Whitlock, and again, not that he knew what was written on the paper, he just knew that I was in this little heckling back and forth. And When the Drew Bledsoe gay question mark thing, that was a big controversial thing in the newspaper industry, and so that was and then at that time in '98 when this was going on, they had hired a sports editor that was trying to run me out of Kansas City. His name was Rick Basic. He was hired by a guy named Den Man, who I had feuded with.
Oh.
And so this whole thing just got blown out of proportion. I was the newspaper, the Kansas City Star, and I ended up working there until 2010. But by that time, I had so much success, that unanticipated success, when they hired me in 1994, I was a rocket ship launched to the moon, and I was a bigger deal than the paper. And anytime anybody at the Kansas City Star went anywhere, editor, publisher, managing editor, anybody else, anytime they went anywhere in Kansas City and spoke, the first thing they're going to get asked is, what's Jason Whitlock like? Or what Jason Whitlock this. And they just weren't comfortable with it. And I work for liberals. And at the time, I hadn't figured it out in my mind that, because the first time I voted was just this past election cycle.
Really?
I always tried to stay out of politics. And so I didn't have a political worldview, but I was clearly conservative by the positions and things that I would take. And I was really, extremely popular in Kansas City. And I'm working for a bunch of liberals that they had this black conservative guy that was driving all of this conversation and was bigger than anybody at the newspaper. And so this was their opportunity to cut me down to size. They had already, again, hired this Rick Basic with his specific job. The guy I'd have to go to lunch with the guy every Friday, and he'd sit in front of me every Friday and tell me that I suck. No one wants to read you anymore, blah, blah. I was just like, this is comical.
Oh, goodness.
And so they suspended me and, thought that would be the end of me. And I just kind of doubled down. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I like it here in Kansas City. I'm dominant here. I can build an empire here and launch a national career from here while still working here, because I believe you got to dominate locally to become some national person. And so that's what I did. And it drove them crazy for an additional 12 years before I left.
Jason, I was a columnist at my college newspaper, the Independent.
Real quick, guys. I have a client I have to address. So I have to hop off. Pleasure meeting you, sir, and I'll be back if I can, if I'm done with the client in time.
Perfect. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Alan.
See you, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, I would write these very controversial, very popular columns when I was in college. And then I went down to the same newspaper I'm already writing, these columns for. I walk into the sports department and, I try and get any gig that they would give me, covering women's golf, anything. They would not give me anything. They did not want me to get a foot in the door. They didn't want me to break into the industry that way. So I've experienced working with petty people in journalism. It's a whole little racket. But you were talking about dominating locally. I grew up in Miami. I was reading Dan Le Batard like every day. He used to be an incredible writer. That's what I wanted to do for a living. I wanted to do that, what Dan Le Batard was doing. Today, he's a pathetic communist. And I wanted to ask, it's doubly insane because his dad's a Cuban. He fled communist Cuba, and now Dan Le Batard's a communist, and he's a Cuban. So I wanted to ask you, can you tell me, tell us something about your experiences? I'm sure you've had run-ins with Dan Le Batard, the communist Cuban.
Andrew, you know nothing about me and Dan's history?
I could tell you that I'm sure I have seen it referenced before, but it's not written on my heart. I can't remember the feuds that you guys had.
Okay, and people will think that like I gassed you up or you're doing this to troll me or this is a setup. And so I just wanted to enter it into the record. I wasn't expecting this. You didn't, this wasn't planned. So Dan Le Batard for years was my best friend in the media industry.
Wow.
I know his parents. I knew his brother. Dan and I double dated on vacations. He'd take his girl to Vegas. I'd take whoever I was dating to Vegas. Dan and I were close. My best friend in the industry.
Wow.
And then as Deadspin and the culture started moving further and further left, Dan started seeking some distance from me because I wasn't going with the culture, and I just couldn't. It's just not in me. And so Dan's one of the best sports writers I've ever met, read, known. He used to do awesome work, but Dan, in my view, is a businessman first and foremost before anything. And so when the money started going left and survival in the business depended upon you being in line with the left, that's where he started to move. Now, I've seen a lot of people like when Deadspin was at the height of its power and influence, AJ Delario and Tommy Craggs and Tim Burke, these guys knew how to bully people. There was a price to pay for not getting on board with the leftist agenda in sports. And so when I saw Dan start going that direction, when I saw Dan's reaction to the smear campaigns that Deadspin was running on me, what crossed my mind is like, hey, I wonder if they got something on Dan, because a lot of people in the media, in the public space, what Deadspin, the way they were bullying people was exposing ESPN executives for sexual malfeasance or sexual harassment. Who knows if it was true or not, but they were just going after people to move the sports media one direction. And Dan could sense it, see it, and he moved that direction. That ended up putting distance between me and Dan. But again, knew his family, but I still had affinity for Dan. And then one day on the show, his partner, Stu Gatz, this is probably in 2015 or 16, when I had just moved over to Fox Sports. And I was going to be working with Colin Cowherd. And Stu Gatz sat on that show and told an incredibly dishonest story about me that was totally intended to cause problems between me and Colin Cowherd. Stu Gatz is on air telling some story about how that I had told him personally that I thought Colin Cowherd was a racist, and that Whitlock's being a total hypocrite here because privately he hates Cowherd and thinks Cowherd's a racist. He's telling this story on air.
Wow.
And Dan is there. And so Dan, as a friend of mine, and I know that there had been some distance put between us, but not that kind of, no one, I wouldn't let you right now tell some unbelievable lie about Dan Le Batard that I knew was untrue. And so Dan just sat there quietly and blah, blah. And I'm like, this is the friend of mine. He's letting Stu. This is like, I'm starting a work relationship with Colin Cowherd, and Stu Gatz is on a national radio show saying this kind of stuff. And that's when I was like, oh, me and Dan aren't friends, clearly. Because all he had to do was tell Stu Gatz to shut up. But what they tried to do was like, oh, everybody knows Stu Gatz. Everybody knew that was a lie. Everybody knows that's just Stu Gatz. And I'm like, okay, bro. We're good here. We're done here.
Well, since you're on the Jewcast, and I know that I used to listen to that radio show. I know Stu Gatz's real name, I believe, is John Wiener.
Yeah,
and
I would change my name.
Well, yeah. On behalf of the Jews, I'd like to disavow that Wiener. That was a very scummy thing to do. And Dan Le Batard, I have his brother's artwork in my house. Lebo, God rest his soul, he passed away recently. And I used to be Facebook friends with his brother, who was totally anti-communist, was a great guy. He signed my art. I met him at a music festival called Langarato, And I grew up reading Dan Le Batard. He was a hero of mine. He was such a great writer, and it totally escaped me that you guys were that close. I remember hearing you on a show back in the day, but that you were that close totally escaped me. And a shame that he was so cowardly. The guy who was the best man at my wedding when I publicly supported Trump went on the internet to write disgusting things about me, and haven't really spoken to him at all since. So it's just, we're in this day and age where everything got so polarized. It's like you go here and you go here. There's very few people in the middle, and it's the way it is. Sorry to hear that story. Thank you for telling it. Totally not a setup at all. A real setup question. This is something I researched, as basic research. In 2008, you were the first sports writer to win the National Journalism Award from the Scripps Howard Foundation. What were you writing about that won you the award?
So that was for the work I did, I believe, in 2007. And, you had to submit, I believe, 10 pieces of work to win that award. But the major stuff that I did in 2007 was Don Imus had said on his radio program about the Rutgers basketball team coached by C. Vivian Stringer. They called them nappy-headed hoes. And
I remember that.
This whole uproar. And I wrote a column saying the same kind of stuff I would say today. Is like, hey, man, I don't even listen to Don Imus. Black folks don't listen to Don Imus. I said, but we sure listen to rap music. And it calls our women every name in the book. And every Black person's an N-word and that word. And so why are we acting like Don Imus is the bridge too far when it's clearly this hip-hop music? That story went everywhere.
You couldn't be more correct.
Got me on Oprah for 2 shows because it's everything Oprah believes, but she didn't have the balls to say. So she had me represent that point of view and blah, blah, blah. And then later on that year, I don't know if you guys remember the Jenna 6 controversy, 6 Black kids from Louisiana that allegedly nearly beat a Black kid to death. No. The Jenna 6 nearly beat a white kid to death. And 6 Black kids nearly beat a white kid to death. Let's say, I'm going off memory, let's say that happened in March. Some guy creates a narrative that, well, they only beat that kid up in March because in October, the months before, someone hung a noose on that campus and the administration didn't properly handle that situation. And so that created the animus that led to the Black kids beating up a white kid in March. And so the whole national media was just going for this, and Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and the typical race baiter, they were holding rallies and marches, and they were saying that the prosecutor had overcharged these Black kids because of racism. And so I went down to Jenna, Louisiana, spent 3 days down there, did some reporting, and came back and told the story of, and this is factual, that a white liberal minister from Texas started a blog and created the Jenna 6 narrative that, hey, this kid only got beat up because 5 months earlier someone hung a noose and the school didn't do that. And the white liberal minister from Texas started this blog, and then he fed it to a reporter at the Chicago Tribune named Howard Witt or something like that. He fed it to a reporter at the Chicago Tribune. He started writing about it and turned it into a national story. And so I tracked down the minister. He consented to an interview. He copped to what he did because he was actually bitter that he wasn't getting the credit for creating the Jenna 6 deal. And he's like, Jesse Jackson, they done came in, and Al Sharpton have overtaken, and they're getting all the credit for the Jenna 6, and I'm the guy that did it. And there was the guy in Chicago Tribune and someone else that he spoon-fed this narrative, and they started reporting it. And I think Howard Witt or whatever his name was, most people thought he was on track to win a Pulitzer Prize for his reporting on the Gym of Six. And I undercut that narrative with my story, and that and several other things that transpired that year that just put me in the national spotlight is how I won the Scripps Howard World Award for commentary.
That's is awesome. So awesome. Yeah, well, so in respect to your time, man, thank you so much for coming on. Do you have a final question, Andrew?
Yeah, a couple of things. I'm paraphrasing now. I didn't write down this quote, but after my Twitter Spaces debate with Candace Owens and Dan Bilzerian and Dave Smith and Andrew Tate and Tristan Tate, I believe Jason Whitlock said, Andrew Meyer is a beast. Very impressive. So I wanted to say thank you, Jason. And do you have any comments on that space?
I remember it. I didn't, the name, obviously I remember Candace Owens, but now when you say those additional names that were on there, they all have relevance to me, that they were people that were on there then that I didn't know what they represented, but I just remember coming away like, man, that guy is honest, transparent, and fair.
Thank you.
And I was like, that we need to have more conversations with that guy.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And it occurred to me during this, I want to send you a copy of my book because you're a writer, and I know you'll appreciate it. I wrote a book called Don't Tase Me, Bro. Real Questions, Fake News, and My Life as a Meme, from the whole Don't Tase Me, Bro thing. And I think you'll enjoy it. I want to send you a copy. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope that we get back to that 90s racial harmony we had when I was growing up. I always talk about when I was a kid, there was a cartoon, the X-Men cartoon, and they have like Storm and Wolverine. They go back in time into like the 60s or something, and they're like shocked by the racial prejudice. Storm is like skin color prejudice. Like what? Like it's like shocking to her. It's like that's the world that I want to live in, where it's like every other movie in the 90s is a buddy cop film with a black dude and a white dude. It's like we're all getting along here, and all this division, this divide and conquer stuff between blacks, whites, Jews. I think the more that we talk to each other, that we're able to have honest conversations and laughs and stuff like that, I hope that we can get to that place. And thank you so much for coming on, Jason.
I'll end with this. It's look at the movies that come out now. And it's like they're promoting racial division. Every movie, it's got a slave narrative, oppression narrative. Everybody's getting anyway. They're programming us for destruction, and we need to do the best we can to fight it. Thank you guys for having me. Love to do it again.
Yes, please.
Peace out.
Thank you so much,
Jason.
Well,
when's
this going to air?
We're live right now on Twitter.
Yeah, and on YouTube. So we'll send you the link.
Yeah, definitely retweet. I think your audience will appreciate it. Where can they find you? They already know who you are, but
everyone knows who he is.
Whitlock Jason, find me there.
Whitlock Jason on Twitter.
This is on Twitter. I would have tweeted it out. Anyway, thank you.
It's always after the fact works too, man. I tagged you.
Perfect.
Appreciate you, sir.